Operation Entebbe, Israel's most daring hostage rescue mission. In 1976, two Germans hijacked a commercial airliner. It had hundreds of people on board. When the plane landed in Uganda, it looked like a stalemate, but the Israelis sprang into action. The story began on June 27, 1976. It was a routine Air France flight from Tel Aviv to Paris. The plane had 248 passengers and 12 crew on board. It landed to take on more passengers in Athens, Greece. That's when the two hijackers walked aboard. Their names were Wilfried Boza and Brigitte Kuhlmann. The Germans were members of the Revolutionary Cells. It was a group allied with the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine. Boza rushed the cockpit with a revolver and a hand grenade. He was then joined by two Palestinian accomplices. The hijackers announced their demands: $5 million and the release of 53 prisoners held in 5 different countries. Then the hijackers ordered the plane to fly to Benghazi, Libya. In Libya, some passengers were released. Then Boza gave the pilots a new itinerary. Eventually, the plane touched down at Entebbe, Uganda. The hostages were herded into the terminal building. The hijackers separated Israelis from non-Israelis. The non-Israelis were set free and flown back to Paris. 94 hostages and a dozen crew members remained. Back in Israel, an operation was already being planned. The man in charge was a former commando, Ehud Barak. He would become the Prime Minister of Israel in 1999. The President of Uganda, Idi Amin, was on the side of the hijackers. The terminal was guarded by Ugandan troops, but Amin was out of the country on a diplomatic trip. So the Israelis came up with a daring idea. They'd fly 4 C-130 Hercules transport aircraft to Uganda. The freighters would be filled with military vehicles, but the vehicles would be disguised as Idi Amin's forces. Within a day, the team was briefed and prepared. They were led by Yonatan Netanyahu. He was the brother of current Israeli PM, Benjamin Netanyahu. The 4 Hercules would be accompanied by 2 Boeing 707 jets. One hosted a command post, the other a field hospital. The mission was codenamed Operation Thunderbolt. Operation Entebbe is what the media called it later. It took a week of negotiations and careful planning. On July 4th, Israeli forces approached Entebbe. During the night, the runway was obscured in darkness. The planes had to navigate and land in zero visibility. The first plane landed. One of the vehicles was expelled. It headed straight for the terminal building. The vehicle was disguised with Ugandan flags. It had 35 Israeli commandos dressed in Ugandan uniforms. But then a Ugandan soldier appeared, raising his rifle. The Israelis shot him with silenced pistols. He collapsed, but then sat back up. This caused another Israeli soldier to open fire with an unsilenced weapon. A massive firefight broke out in the dark. Once the smoke cleared, both hijackers were dead. 20 Ugandan soldiers were likewise KIA. The hostages were guided into the waiting aircraft. Once on board, they were counted. There were 102 hostages. 3 were killed, and 1 was left behind in the chaos. The only Israeli commando killed was Yonatan Netanyahu. He'd been shot within minutes of the first aircraft landing.